5:32, call the meeting to order. My name is Vice Chairperson Dan Troggett, the Vice Chairperson of the committee. The first thing I wanted to discuss was Robert's Rules of Order. I have been a little nervous in my way I conduct meetings. If there are visitors visiting us, it's kind of been traditional like that. As I remember visitors, but we need to be a little bit more focused, and I'm going to be a little bit more focused. And if we do have, I don't even know if we have anyone on the line here.
You guys all get the rain.
You got-
You're
Hey,
okay, cool.
Yeah, we have Reba, who is not for public comment, and she's Middlesex consultant.
So if we do have public comment in the future, I'm going to be just letting you guys know, is I'm chairing, I'm going to be a little bit more, it's not public comment. Quiet, okay? So, but if, from what I understand from the rules, if someone has a question for someone in attendance, say someone's here from some organization that we're discussing and they want to know something about it, we can ask for the comment.
And it is up to the chair if you would want to call on someone to speak.
Okay.
That is a guest or a guest from the public. You have the right to do that, but it shouldn't be just chiming in during CAC business.
Okay.
Does it function like, kind of like the BRB and the ARC where it's your case or your item on the agenda, then you get a chance to speak, and otherwise it's open at the beginning only?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if they're on the agenda, they're obviously like, well, they were here to present, they can speak freely and if questioned. But yeah, if they're just observing in the room, unless called upon, they shouldn't be speaking up during CAC business.
Yeah, there have been times when someone was here who represented a topic we were talking about, and they weren't necessarily going to talk about that, but if we had a question or something we wanted to ask them, we just kind of asked them. I guess that's how I was talking about.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think we're just trying to avoid unnecessary comments during CAC business.
When I first started, we did a parliamentary workshop on parliamentary procedures. This is the way that you're supposed to conduct a meeting. Or something like
That's
that.
coming, so.
Oh, that's in the.
If you look at the,
I think she sent us an email about that.
yeah, so this would cover that type of information,
That's
so.
probably what I did.
Oh, that's what you asked me about. Yeah, so if you could please attend this, if you have any questions about the general rule of order, sunshine law, chapter 163, what we're under, Florida state statute, then that would be helpful for you to attend if you can. There are 2 sessions, they'll go over the same material, so you only really have to attend one. And there's no virtual option at this point. So we do have binders that we're preparing to physically hand you binders for reference material. So we are encouraging everyone to come in person that can.
This is really good. I did this a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, and really gives a lot of really good information about what the CRA is, what the CP is. So I really would highly recommend that anyone. So moving on from the Robert's Rules of Orders comment, do we have any other? You said there was no one in public comment.
No.
Anyone else in the room here for public comment?
These are presenters.
Okay. Then we will close the public comment. Next item is action items.
Let's go over Robert's Rules of Order.
You know what? I just realized that I didn't do the roll call.
I should be speaking.
I didn't do the roll call, so let me back it up. We have Katie Bauer here, Dan Troggett, I'm here, Sean here, Mary Beth Williams, Dustin Pastor
Here.
Kim Paleo, not here, Rebecca Nagy
Here.
Brian Bogan, not here, and Ray Wong is here. So everyone except a couple people. Okay, then let's go back down to item number 3, approval of February 6, 2024 meeting minutes. We have a copy in front of us. We also had a copy sent to us. anyone wants to make a motion, please do. We need a few more minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second,
of the last meeting.
that's the best door. Make a motion to approve the minutes. And it's about, that's about, seconded the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to reports. The first up is CRA commercial grants and portfolio audits and recommendations from the CRA grants team. I assume some of the people back there are here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vanessa Ross, and I am here representing our division lead, Ms. Dee Reed. She sends her apologies. She had a death in the family, so she is tending to her family business right now. But we are the new CRA grants division, so brought our team with us. We have Andrea Rosshaven, Karina Landebrink, and Brett Burks is also a part of our team, but he's not here either. So we are here today to provide an update on the grants audit and proposed changes to our current portfolio. So this presentation that we're going to give this evening will include a lot of information. So we ask that you hold your questions until the end. My team members are going to give out notepads and the presentations to you. And we will collect the notepads at the end of the presentation so that if you have any questions or anything that you want to send back with us, we will be taking your questions and the feedback and using it as a part of our first round of grant performance evaluations held in this upcoming year. So let's see if I can get this to work.
In February 2023, the CRA board approved the restructure of the CRA. One aspect of that restructure was the creation of a dedicated grants management team supporting all 10 community redevelopment areas. Following the workshop held last year, it was determined that the 3 areas that needed to be addressed are internal organization, bylaws, and grants. This presentation will focus solely on the grants audit and the recommendations to the commercial grant portfolio. As a result of the CRA board retreat held in June 2023, the board established this mission and vision for the agency. Our 5 focus areas are attainable housing, connectivity, economic development, quality of life, and community engagement. Grants are a major tool for community redevelopment, but have been underutilized. Our goals for the grants are for them to reflect the revised vision, mission, and goals of the CRA, respond to the priorities outlined in the area's community redevelopment plan, often referred to as a CRP. Reduce and consolidate the number of grants and applications, contain user-friendly language and clearly outline eligible criteria and award amounts, and support a streamlined application process. Concerns and priorities were relayed to the CRA managers and documented in their interviews with staff and consultants. We took a closer look at all grants offered across the 10 CRAs and compared them to the best practices internally and successful grants in other communities. The CRA manager interview findings include: overall, few grants were used and some areas report high utilization as only
3 completed grants in a year. Grants not being used as intended, and grants not necessarily tied to any goals in the CRA plans. They also include areas for improvement consideration, such as improved access to grant funds, clearer communications in grant marketing, addressing means or access to capital, and ongoing evaluation of the grants. The assessment of our grant inventory revealed inconsistency in grant offerings across CRA areas, insufficient award amounts. For example, the upstairs residential conversion grant was $7,000 per unit, which does not cover the cost of a renovation. And grants were created to address narrow scopes. For instance, the objective of a grant whose goal is to attract a sit-down restaurant could be broadened to attract a variety of missing neighborhood amenities. All grants should be guided by best practices, and to ensure they do, we ask the following questions. Was the intent of the grant an allowed use of CRA funding through Florida Statute, Chapter 163, Part 3? Does the outcome align with the priorities expressed in the CRP? Does the outcome align with the mission and vision? And are the funds in the current budget, or will it require reprogramming for a future fiscal year?
Some of the proposed efficiencies include improvements eligible under the CRA board approved standard grants would be approved administratively, allow the use of one application to apply for multiple grants, including stacking up to 3 standard grants per property, and mitigate the financial burden for applicants who already have a financial investment in the area. The audit revealed that multiple grants had been created to address a narrow purpose or had a similar focus. Those could be consolidated into grants with a broader scope. Other grants, which are being strategically sunset, were created for uses that will be transitioned to the CRA Project Management Division. On the next slide is the final list of grants being proposed, which have been tied back to the CRA focus areas. We propose simplifying grants into 3 standard grants, a special project grant, and a increment funding reimbursement grant to come. The arrows to the left highlight the focus areas supported by the proposed grant.
These are the overall changes being proposed. Revising grant award amounts with respect to cost estimates, historical program data, and area budgets. Increasing the ability for applicants to stack the 3 standard grants in one application. Refining eligibility criteria by allowing commercial tenants to apply. Defining scoring criteria, which incorporates CRA priorities in the grant description documents. Expanding grant offerings to allow for mixed-use projects. Prioritizing high-traffic roadways. Not requiring proof of matching funds up front. Allowing credit toward matching funds for legacy property owners. Creating a universal grant application. Establishing one-on-one pre-application assistance to ensure successful applications. Creating a central application intake location. Reducing application processing times by removing layers of review. Developing a grant tracking program, and providing a regular project status check-in between award and reimbursement. The proposed grants were cross-checked with the area plans to ensure that the recommendations reflected the priorities expressed by the community. The next slide in your presentation now is a reference table, which outlines the CRP sections for your CRA area that supports each of the proposed standard grants. As we've described, the proposed grant portfolio will expand access to grant funds to meet the needs of the community. Reports that are being built into the new tracking software will provide valuable information on grant utilization and will be used in the ongoing evaluations of the grants to support potential improvements. In addition, we will examine the performance of the grants against the community needs, construction costs, and changes in the economy as a part of the annual budget process. These will be the metrics and outcomes we will utilize to evaluate the performance of the proposed grants. We thank you for your time and attention during our presentation. At this time, we are available for any questions you may have listed on your notepad about the proposed grant portfolio. Staff will be collecting the notepad following the Q&A session. Thank you.
Right. So does anybody have questions?
I do. That's very thorough and helpful. Thank you. We have a lot of work to do to get this new process implemented. Somewhere there was a reference to historic preservation, but I couldn't quite tell from the guidelines where historic preservation projects would fall within the various kinds of projects one can apply for.
So historic preservation projects could be any of the standard grants or the special use grant. So it could be any, fall anywhere in there. What we are doing is giving more points to historic preservation projects in the matrix evaluation as far as scoring them. We're giving some preference, some additional points for if it is historic
Would it
preservation
be
project.
helpful to say that somewhere, or do you not want people to know that? Because I think it might encourage people to apply if they have a historic facade they want to preserve or restore or something.
So the actual, formal guidelines for all of the grant programs are currently in our legal department for review.
Okay.
They will be going to the CRE board March 21st. And so if the CRE board approves them, then yes, that'll be heavily, added into our marketing and the information about it. But at this point, we don't know what legal's gonna, we have to wait for legal to approve the way that we've structured the grants. They may have some changes or some tweaks they need to make. So that's why we didn't bring you the actual formal guidance documents. But they will be presented to the board on the 21st for their evaluation, those full documents that show the historic preservation grant.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. Early in the presentation, you mentioned grants being historically underutilized, and I think subsequent to that, one of the goals was listed as reducing the number of grants and also reducing applications. It seems sort of counterintuitive. Maybe you could expand on that, because you also mentioned trying to improve access
And increase amount.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have right now of the 10 CRE districts, there are 18 different grant programs. So some of them are only available in certain areas. Some of them are pretty close to being the same thing in different areas with slightly different criteria. So when we say we're reducing grants, we're reducing the number of grant offerings. What we've done is combine them where they make sense. Like the facade grant, there's the facade and site improvement grant is taking improvements that were eligible under funding different grants and putting them in one grant to make it simpler. And as far as, we're trying to use one application so that if you're applying for multiple grants, you're not filling out an application multiple times for multiple grants for the same project. Those are the types of improvements where we're not really reducing the number of grant offerings, but we're not reducing the breadth of what is available to people. We're actually increasing it a little bit more where it makes sense. So does that answer the?
Yeah, and I think it's just what you're saying. I think it's maybe a matter of providing a little bit more clarity in the presentation. Just a quick follow-up question with regards, when was the last time, I think there was a mention with regards to increasing the grant maximums. When was the last time that was done?
It depends on the grant. Some grants were made as recent as 2019 or 2020, I think, in one case. I think there was something. So, but I know like the facade grant, I don't think the grant maximum been increased since the inception of the program.
Yeah, that's sort of why I'm asking.
So it doesn't reflect market reality.
Yeah, right, and that's exactly what I was going to get at. Yeah, that's right here that sort of will listen to construction and escalate. Sort of, I mean, when I think about, how the market is different today compared to even, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, and that continues to be a real issue to consider. So that's great.
And that's going to be part of our annual evaluation of the grants. We'll be looking at market conditions. We're looking at the kind of projects we're getting in and what the cost structures are and things like that. So we can make those
adjustments on an annual basis rather than sitting on a shelf for, 9
Right.
years and then somebody, yeah.
No, I've always been curious about how the grants are presented or advertised, for lack of a better word, to the community. I mean, because I know a lot of business owners downtown, and I'm just grants I've heard of. I don't know anything about that, and granted, there's a lot of information bombarding a lot of people, so I can't necessarily think that's the fault, but I'm just kind of interested how businesses or other people learn about grants.
Well, that was that's one of the problems of having 18 different grants in 10 different districts, is it's really hard to market them that way. So we are, with the consolidation of a lot of the new grants, we are working with V Parks, who is our communications and project manager, to develop a very robust communication strategy to get the word out, because we want people to know about the grants. We want people to use the grants. And again, part of the annual evaluation is, the utilization of the grants, how people are hearing about it, how we can do better. So we're going to do that on a regular basis. And the KPIs you saw in there, we're going to track that on a quarterly basis to see how things are going, but we're going to definitely evaluate on an annual basis.
And it's very good that you're looking at the dollar amounts on some of the grants, but some of them, you can't, like replace a broken window.
Right. Exactly.
Where is a list of those 18 grants and what grants reside in each district? Do you have to look at each CRA?
Yes. Yes, because for the vast majority of the grants, other than facade, I think facade was the only grant available across all the, or not even wasn't available across all the districts, it was available across most of the districts.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, the majority of the grants were only available in a single district. Like Drew Park has a fence grant. It's the only district that has a grant just for commercial fences. Or an upstairs residential conversion grant in East Tampa and West Tampa. So they were done in silos. And so this audit was really to look at that and say, how can we do better? How are they being used? How can we improve that? And how can we make sure that we don't fall into that habit going forward? So we can kind of make sure that we're doing that constant reevaluation.
Are the grants and the criteria listed on a website or something where, if we do know a business person, we can just go here and find out about it?
Well, the current grants, some of them are on the website, some of them aren't, because it depends on application meetings for most grants, people interested in them. They can always contact our office. Our contact information is on back there. When the new grants become available, that information will be put out so that people can get information about what's available.
Does anyone in your office, like you see a building would be a perfect, candidate for a grant, you ever just like.
Cold. Absolutely. Absolutely. Trust me, we drive around and we see things. I think I've done hundreds of letters and drop-ins on businesses and saying, hey, we have this program that really fixes this problem right here that we'd like to see. And part of the improvements is we had problems with it had to be in the past, it had to be the property owner. And sometimes the business operating there was very open to doing that, but the property owner didn't want to go through the paperwork. So one of the improvements we made with those grants is letting the property owner basically sign a document, letting the tenant apply for the grant and operate the grant. So that, in a lot of cases, a triple net lease anyway, so the landlord, the partner is not paying for the improvements anyhow. So that makes it more accessible as well.
Is attainable housing, which is so expensive to create. So I'm wondering what size grants will be available in that area that would have an impact.
So these are for commercial grants. There's a separate unit to do housing and having housing grants. And so that's not our area of expertise, but I understand that they will probably be putting forth their programs at some point, coming and letting you guys know about that.
Thank you.
How many applications did you get last year for grants?
I do not know off the top of my head.
Like single digits, was it?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Like again, downtown only had facade. So it only had the one program.
3 between channel. Yeah, very.
Cool.
I know it's supposed to go through legal review. You mentioned short approval timeline, is that 3 to 6 weeks, 3 to 6 months?
30 to 60 days is our target. Because we're, right now, everything, most of the grants have to go to the CRA board for approval. And so we're hoping is they will let us to administratively approve them if the program meets all those guidelines, those 3 standard grants, that we can just process it through in 30 to 60 days. Because the delay in processing has also been a problem with some people. Their project can't wait. And they're not going to wait 4 or 5 months to get the project through.
And then I always love like how it's defined. What's long-term property owner? Is that defined by 5 years, 10 years?
That criteria is also in legal review, so.
We have a lot of new property owners. What's local, who's now?
And we also want to let you know that not only with the changes to the commercial portfolio, there are changes to the CRA overall in general.
Right.
So a lot of the, when you have mentioned about getting the word out to business owners and getting the word out to citizens about these grants that are available, with the changes, our CRA managers that are in each of the districts are going to be more of those liaisons that are going to be able to go out and present this information to the business owners and to the citizens and everything like that. So our team was created to kind of be almost like the behind the scenes or the second step for the information that's gathered by the CRA managers, or people can come to us directly. So that's why our information is there. We're creating ways for them to access us via phone, computer, everything. So we're trying to, one, make it more accessible as far as how you can apply, but also increasing the avenues in which people are getting information.
We have a annual budget for just grants, right?
Yeah, but we'll be creating additional items depending on what is established. There may just be the facade grant in the downtown budget. So yeah, so whatever is approved, this is a discussion I have with you all, because I would need some crystal ball discussion as far as what would we put based on how many we think we would get to apply per approved grant programs.
So the thought is we would have line items for different types of grants, not just a grant budget overall, but not just for each individual.
Yeah, I would think that's how it would be allotted, is per grant program, to keep track of it that way. It would fall under one cost center that would be grants, would be divided out by the specific name grant. Is that how I assume it would be established in the budget?
Do you happen to know or magnitude what our number is right now?
Well, it's
Right there.
And I'm sorry, I didn't even look at it specifically. Fix that on the second.
Commercial business facade.
Yeah,
60.
okay. And then, yeah, I even look at the program. And I was thinking that's sufficient, because if it's are still around 50 or something, okay. So I would say that will be for the first year until we get a flavor of after the marketing and how well it works. Do we have enough? But I think we do. That amount of money.
So that amount actually split up in 3 months.
No.
Okay.
No, if we, I mean, it's really, it's all kind of open to discussion as we roll into fiscal year 25, which starts in October. So if we wanted to keep that amount for a grant, we could, and then establish new funding streams for the other grants that are approved. We can. I think that's plenty though for facade. You know, that gives us a handful of facade applicants. So maybe with the robust marketing, we'll see more applications than we ever have seen before. So it's probably a safe number just to keep until we have it, that we're additional fund for that program. And then we'd want to create more funding for the other new programs.
I mean, good problem to have is the first year you run out of funds because you got so many requests. And then you say, look, guys, you approved 5 this year. We'll budget more next year, back next year.
Yeah, yeah, so
That'd be
yeah,
great.
my reference to crystal ball, I have no idea. I mean, maybe we could get a sense. Usually I just kind of get a feel for what people are talking out on the street, if they're gonna apply or not. See, people will call and just kind of like put the toe in the water of thinking about applying. I don't have any of those right now, but if you hear of any, let me know. But it's just really a guess how many I think will actually go through the application and be awarded the funding. So I think we're good right now with that amount. And then we can always, like Justin said, we can always put more the following year if we think we're gonna have even more applicants come in.
Could facade improvement grants include having an artist or mural, for instance, on the facade?
That would fall under special grants, or do we have?
I think it would have to fall under special grants.
Which we can't apply for in downtown?
No, it would be one of the, yeah, it's anything that's kind of outside of the box thinking.
Okay.
So if it's a mural that doesn't really kind of fit in a specific grant, specific to what that grant is offering, that would be your special grant. So it could.
So that kind of touches on the next question I was gonna ask earlier. Is there any type of access grants for community or neighborhood groups that are doing improvements in the neighborhood, like a mural or something like that?
Currently, all of the grants that we're presenting are for commercial property, mixed use or commercial property. They're not for public realm use. So that would have to be a discussion you guys would have to have about, what kind of things. Because some of those types of projects are transitioning away from being funded to the organization being done by our project management team. So.
And then also, it all depends on the project, because some of the projects now, there were some changes to the legislation in 2019 that made it to where they can no longer be completed through the CRA, excuse me, because they're no longer eligible. So we would have to, and that's why she said it's kind of, sometimes it might be some of those out of the box projects that we may have to think if it can be done, because a lot of them that have been done in the past are no longer valid and can no longer be funded by CRA funds.
Just have to ask. Since we're downtown.
Not a problem.
I have one more question. I just have to ask, since we're downtown and the party zone, a great percentage of downtown, have you ever discussed them with the parties? Are they ever amenable to grants or discussions? Because most of their properties are the ones that I'm looking at.
Really? Well, I mean, we've worked. They're also in Ybor, where I used to work, and no, they've not ever applied for anything or expressed interest.
Property actually they have a mass across the street. That's they improved, but the rest.
Yeah, we haven't had any applications.
Are there laws in place now that if somebody created a new surface parking lot, they would have to do landscaping and everything?
Yeah, well, see, I'm thinking I'm crossing boundaries. I know Ybor, we have those improved lot requirements to the Barrio Latino Commission.
I think they would, just under
Yes,
zoning
because
Yeah.
they're grandfathered in, they don't have to do anything.
zoning requirement.
Well, if you have any questions or any comments, if you just leave them on the pad, and Corinne and Andrea are going to come by, because the presentations are for you to keep. As we stated before, our contact information is on the back page of the presentation. So if you come up with some questions after we leave, then you can give us a call.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Tell them we'll be back on now, in 25 minutes.
Thank you very much, Grant's team. We are moving on to the redevelopment plan update, review, and discussion. I think Reba
Yes.
is on line here. Can you hear us,
I am
Reba?
on the line. Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Go ahead and take it.
Excellent. I'm going to share my screen. Thumbs up if you can see it.
Yes.
Fantastic. Alrighty. So we'll go ahead and dive right in. And I wanted to outline some meeting goals. Usually my time with you all is relatively short. But this is a pretty long one today because we're going to go over some of the bigger chunks of the draft CRP. By a show of hands, and not to call anyone out, but did anyone happen to read the draft? And it is okay if no one read the 10,000 word document.
I did go through it. I skimmed it, yes.
All pages.
That's totally fine. So this presentation isn't going to cover the full gamut of the document. Didn't want to be here for too long without you, with you guys. Roughly 2.5 hours and 60 slides, stuff like that. So we're going to focus mainly on just the overall framework and the new vocabulary that's within the draft CRP. Walk through the project program and development methodology, so the PPDs, which are within the kind of latter 2/3 of the document, and then really looking to collect feedback related to the goals and strategic actions. If you skim through the document, you'll see that there is a scoring methodology as well. We can get into that. I actually have the spreadsheet pulled up, which might make it a little bit easier to review, but it is going to focus on the goals and strategic actions, and then we can get into the scoring if we have some time a little bit later. But just wanted to overview that before we dive in. Also wanted to outline some of the objectives in writing the plan. So there were 5 goals that we wanted to achieve as the consultant. Sort of leading the charge. The first was to establish a baseline. So as we all know, the current plan was established in 1983, updated in 1988. We did want to utilize the past to sort of inform the present, but also identify the needs of today in accordance with Chapter 163, the available data that we have, stakeholder interviews, input from the public, as well as this body, and then the CRA board. We wanted to align plan goals with the CRA's goals. So bringing the plan up to date with the city's goals in mind, with the new goals that have been established within the department. And we also wanted to create a flexible plan, so lean into some of the change and some of the turbulence that we're seeing, possible votes on the TIF percentage, which I believe we're looking at in May, either April or May, some changes within the department, and making sure that the plan isn't tethered to special projects that may eventually outdate. Final 2, so outlining a prioritization process, something that can balance competing funding requests with the needs of the area and give a little bit of leverage to this body when negotiating with those folks, and then providing a framework for the future of the downtown CRA. So setting forth those goals, releasing them into the ether, and then allowing the market to sort of drive from there. So the summary, a quick summary of the CRP, it's broken down into 3 distinct chunks. So you have the existing conditions analysis, the policy goals and strategic actions, and then project prioritization and scoring. As mentioned, we're going to focus more so on the goals and strategic actions today, but we will overview some of the other items. A quick reminder that everything is organized around these 7 needs categories. So environmental infrastructure, land use and economic development, transportation, public safety and quality of life, affordable and attainable housing, urban design, and historic preservation. If you're actively listening, you'll hear some similarities between this presentation and the presentation that you just heard. So you're starting to see that type of alignment there. Another quick reminder of how we got to those needs categories. So through all of the intake that we've done throughout the fall, the summer, and then last spring when we initially started, through the existing conditions analysis, public involvement, and all that good stuff, funneling it through everything that we needed to is how we got to these 7 needs categories. And then I'll just touch on this slide really quickly. This is just giving you an overview of what these categories mean. And this is actually a sneak preview of what the document is going to look like in the future. You may have noticed that the graphics have changed and the icons have changed too. So we're working on a more graphicized format compared to the Word document that you received. And they'll be highlighted around these needs categories. But just a reminder, environmental infrastructure is related to the impact of severe weather events. Land use and economic development is related to economic conditions. Public safety and quality of life is related to the experiential quality of those working, visiting, and living within the CRA. Affordable and attainable housing is, of course, one of the top priorities of the department. So the condition and market of housing within the downtown. Transportation, touching on major roads, multimodal facilities, and travel safety. And then rounding things out with urban design and historic preservation. So reviewing the design and aesthetic quality of the public realm and the built environment. So that might extend to private development as well. And then historic preservation, making sure that we're safeguarding and protecting historic structures and specific areas that are significant. So I'm going to go through these slides very quickly. It is probably repeat information, I believe. I think I may have given a presentation related to these slides back in October, but it's just a really quick summary, the highlights of the existing conditions analysis. So looking first at environmental infrastructure, one of the largest threats to the infrastructure within the CRA we determined is storm surge and sea level rise, in addition to any kind of sudden onset of severe weather that we've been seeing in and around Florida. We used NOAA intermediate projections to kind of evaluate different scenarios within the CRA, and over 95% of the assets are at risks, and those assets include roads, utilities, structures, including historic structures that may or may not be wind loaded or flood ready, things along those lines. For land use and economic development, this just highlights the underutilization of some of the parcels in the downtown CRA. So you can see a lot of that kind of flows up and in near the Selman Expressway and I-275, as well as kind of the number of surface lots in and around the area too. So that's roughly 30% of the land area that's currently underutilized and not getting into that feedback loop with the tip contribution. For transportation, the CRA has one of the highest concentrations of transit users in the city, namely because of the transfer center, the number of lines, the kind of first and last mile connections that you have access to, and the sheer volume and density of both employment and residences. But there's also a high concentration of roadways with disproportionate crash rates. So off the top of my head, Boreen is on the high injury network. Parts of Twigs are on the high injury network. Scott Street is also on the high injury network as well. Affordable and attainable housing. The median real estate price is more expensive than 25% of Tampa's neighborhoods. Some of that is just kind of pure statistics related to the value and just sheer number of properties downtown. But we did find that on Harbor Island specifically, so here down south, it's actually more expensive than 52% of the neighborhood. So there's a bit of a disproportionality to that. And then the rental price overall is more expensive than 47% of Tampa's neighborhoods. There's also limited subsidized housing in the area. So there are, I think, around 400 units in around these streets here that are income restricted, but they're also age restricted. So they're not for families or necessarily for working individuals. Last few, public safety and quality of life. So this really mixes parks and criminal activity. It's a little bit of a catch-all in terms of a needs category, but it does talk to some of the issues in terms of maintenance challenges related to the beautification and design of parks. Um, uh, Parks also experience issues related to ADA accessibility, making sure that there are curb ramps, places for folks who are using a mobility device to go down into that specific park. And then related to crime in the downtown CRA, it's still prevalent downtown. It's not as high as other areas of the city, but there are issues with trespassing, particular folks who are unhoused within the CRA. For urban design, that's a little bit harder to quantify. We did end up reviewing a lot of the downtown city plan documents over the last 15 to 20 years and summarize them within the CRP. But this is really a note from stakeholders. They indicated that they wanted consistency in urban design and placemaking in downtown, things that can kind of fold into what the downtown partnership is doing related to branding, neighborhooding, all of that good stuff. And then a lot of survey participants also wrote in that they wanted to acknowledge and celebrate distinct neighborhoods. Finally, we make it to historic preservation. The CRA actually houses 30% of the city's designated historic properties, so that's citywide. And then 20 additional properties will become eligible for historic designations through the remaining life of the CRA, so through 2043. So moving on to the latter half of the document, we've left the existing conditions section here. What we're going to get into are the projects, programs, and developments, policies, goals, and strategic actions, and then finally project prioritization. This is really where the meat of the document lies. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of focus on these three areas independently so as not to overwhelm you. Again, it's kind of hard to fit 10,000 words into a very short presentation, but please stop me if there are any questions or anything like that. So focusing on the PPDs, so projects, programs, and developments are activities that make physical and procedural changes within the downtown CRA. There are competing funding requests that this body reviews against the current CRP. So anytime that a developer might come in interested in some sort of deal or subsidy related to maybe affordable housing, maybe offsetting the cost of certain utilities, making certain improvements. That's really what we're looking at here. And there are explicit definitions around those. So projects are going to be initiatives aimed at developing a product that contributes to the achievement of strategic actions, which we'll get into later. A project specifically would be a case like looking for a consultant to update the CRP would be a project. It results in a plan, a professional study, request for information, request for proposals, things along those lines. Programs are sets of activities undertaken by you all or a partner organization. So someone that you would normally work with that executes initiatives such as grants, incentives, awards, things along those lines to carry out strategic actions. And then developments are what I alluded to earlier. So they're private entities interested in planning, designing, and constructing buildings or infrastructure projects on a piece of land within the downtown CRA and has the most impact in terms of physical and oftentimes monetary space. So we'll move into the second column here and talk about policies, goals, and strategic actions. And actually, we're just going to talk about goals and strategic actions in this particular presentation. But policies, goals, and strategic actions outlines activities the agency may utilize to address the needs identified in the existing conditions analysis. And that'll make a little bit more sense later. But it does include the ability to request specific changes to those PPDs to achieve agency goals. So again, that'll be folded in the next few slides, but wanted to go over those specific definitions. Policies are a set of guidelines, rules, and considerations that may guide the agency's ability to achieve strategic actions and accomplish the goals of the CRP. So it gives you a lot of leeway to say, hey, this isn't quite up to snuff, but can you please go back and revise? So that's written in, so that doesn't have to go through different discussions, things along those lines. Goals are the specific and measurable objectives that the agency can achieve to revitalize the needed areas within the downtown CRA. And that is time bound by the agency's sunset year. And strategic actions are the specific steps in the form of PPDs that the agency should take to support the goals of revitalization. Now, I know that this is a lot of walls of text, so just wanted to pause and see if there are any questions about sort of the vocabulary that we're going through. And then I think the next few slides will illustrate how they fall in line with each other.
Questions?
Nope.
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. Hopefully we're not overwhelmed, but again, please stop me if you are and need something answered. So still focusing on those goals and strategic actions here. And again, I know another wall of text, but I'll walk you through it. So we'll start with environmental infrastructure, and this is really where the reading and needing your feedback is most important. We've established different goals, which are kind of the larger umbrellas under which the strategic actions go. So the first goal under environmental infrastructure is the agency shall provide needed upgrades to the infrastructure within the downtown CRA by implementing climate resilient infrastructure projects that focus on storm surge mitigation, sea level rise adaptation, and hazardous flooding. So you can see here this starts to touch on those needs categories and address them in specific actions. And those specific actions are under this. And I won't go through all of this. It's probably not great, not the best podcast ever to have me to sit there and listen to me kind of rattle this off. But I'll go through the first strategic action, which is to support green and low impact infrastructure within a PPD. So that can be permeable pavement, rain gardens, bioretention areas, specific design features that would mitigate those risks related to weather events. So that's what we're looking at here. Again, I don't want to spend too much time kind of disseminating all of these. I do have a slide for each one, but we can actually skip to the Excel spreadsheet, and I think that might be a little bit better. But are there any questions about how this is structured?
Questions? Doesn't look like it.
It does
Okay.
look prettier than the original Word document. Yeah, I mean, it's formatted nice and.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's colors.
Yeah, it'll look a lot better after a graphic designer is done with it, I promise you. And it'll be a little bit easier to read. I'm going to stop sharing really quickly and actually bring up the spreadsheet. And I think this is where some of the questions will come in. Thumbs up if you can see my screen. Looks good. Okay. Yeah, the font's a little small. I acknowledge that. So the intention here is that someone comes to this CAC with a request with, I know we'll throw out, but that individual needs $1 million to offset the cost of building a building. How do we establish a system in which we can prioritize this person's request among all of the other competing requests that we have? So the idea is that we'll call them a developer in this case. They can go through and determine whether or not their projects apply to the strategic action. So they can go through and hit X. You can see how many points are available per strategic action. And I'll zoom in here just so you can see them. they're, there we go. So they're between 0.5 and 2 points, depending on what the strategic action is. I'll zoom out just a little bit. They'll total their points at the bottom. That's going to be your raw score. So the maximum for environmental infrastructure is 5 points, and then you would multiply it against the weighted value, which in this case it's 1 for different goals. It's going to be higher. Transportation, it's 4. Public safety and quality of life is 4. Then you can see where affordable and attainable housing is weighted a bit higher at 7. And then the ultimate goal is that you would receive a total score down at the bottom after performing this exercise. And then what we're in debate now, so we're still kind of in choose your own adventure mode, is what that threshold score should be in order to go to the CRA board for a vote. So do you have to score a D or higher, 60 or higher in order to do it? Is it 40 or higher? Is it 80 or higher? So we're going to do some work tomorrow with the partnership just to kind of see where some of their projects are laying out as a litmus test. But the idea is that the developer in our example would go through this exercise. CRA staff can go through this exercise. The CAC can go through this exercise too. And then there's a little bit of leverage there for debate between you and the other party to determine, how well this is addressing those strategic actions which are aligned with the needs categories. And to make it easy in case no one wanted to do the math, we did create this nifty little worksheet that totals everything up for you. So you would just click it and it would go in, and then the maximum score, so the perfect PPD in this case would have a score of 100. So thoughts, questions? I know that we didn't go through each individual strategic action. I really didn't think that would be a great use of our time, but we can if you'd like to. But in terms of how this is structured, I see a hand. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. So if someone comes with a proposal, are they expected to meet all of the strategic goals in one proposal?
No. So the idea is they would come in with a project that has its own sort of content baseline, right? So if someone wanted to come in and build a building, you would want to make sure as a CAC that that building is somehow tying to these strategic actions, but it does not have to tie to every single strategic action. However, if there
If you only did one, let's say your project really addressed environmental infrastructure, you're only going to get a maximum of
5
whatever
points,
number
gotcha.
of points you can get from that
Mhm.
section, which is going to be really low compared to a score of 100.
Correct, right. So that is something that we're working on with staff now to see if maybe, and it's actually written in this language within the current draft, if it should maybe be parsed out depending on the type of project. So if it's only an environmental infrastructure project, are we pitting against other projects that are environmental infrastructure projects? Or if it's just, for instance, an affordable housing project, are we pitting it against other affordable housing projects? So there's the ability to, like I said, create your own adventure or determine what's going to be best in what case, especially with public safety and quality of life. A lot of the strategic actions are related to providing funding for certain events because that's a lot of what we heard, what we found through the needs categories and through the existing conditions assessment. But not everyone's going to come through wanting to put on a concert and have the CRA contribute to it within Curtis Hickson Park. So there's flexibility there to allow for different projects to still be prioritized.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a lot of, in the past, we've had a lot of people come through here, coming in with proposals and, we just kind of look around at each other and say, I don't know, does this even fit within our scope? So would they have to do this before they even come to the CAC? Or is this just a CRA board?
That's a good question. So the intent is that this will go out into within the CRP, and it would be accessible to the public. And I believe we do actually want, and Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, we do want people to come in with this in mind, with kind of their case already proven. So you don't have to go through a presentation, sort of sift it out. And then if the CAC did want to perform this exercise and say, no, we interpreted it this way, we interpreted it this way, can you go back to the drawing board and have that discussion? That's sort of the intent there. So it's both an internal exercise and an external exercise.
Yeah, and it's a good idea, I think, to have the people who are providing the proposal or the ask to know what these are.
Yeah.
And it could help bolster their project as well, because they're gonna try to align with the strategic goals to get a better point. So, so we're hopeful that, it's gonna help the projects quality that are being proposed to us. And then the CAC would give that recommendation to the CRA board, but it would need to pass that threshold of whatever it is we land on. Which, when I say we, it would be administration, but is it, like she said, is it 60, is it 70, is it 80? But if the CRA board would provide that guidance to us, that, we don't want to see something if it's 70 and below. We want to see things that are high quality that make that 75 on a higher score. So, but yeah, I think it'll go through a good vetting system for those who are coming to us, that they'll self-evaluate themselves and then we can evaluate. So it'll go through a good.
It seems like a win-win-win situation. You're aligning goals, they have a better chance of getting the grants that they're requesting, and it's good for the built environment.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we look at like block 10 and 12 that came, had they had some sort of system to look at in advance like this, they would have known, oh, not with my time. Or, I'm lining right up with what their goals are, or would have shifted to be applicable to those strategic goals. And then they would feel more, they'd have a little bit more confidence that it would go in their favor. So.
Yeah. And I think there's still a little bit of room to figure out how this is administered, right? So there might be like a trial and error kind of pilot period while we're still feeling these things out. But I think the overall framework will really give the board and the CAC and CRA staff the ability to kind of cut down on the back and forth that's happening with some of these requests, and saving time and money kind of in the long run too. Additional thoughts, questions?
Anyone? Doesn't look like it.
Okay. So I'm gonna stop sharing and then reshare and go back to the presentation. Let me skip ahead before I do that. Okay. So we're prepping for a board presentation that will have a lot of this information, a lot of the similar information that you just saw in it, walking the board through the matrix, the scoring, all of that good stuff. So there's still time to give your input on the strategic actions and goals that we outlined. Now, I apologize that we didn't send this out beforehand, but would it be helpful if we got this presentation to you? You were able to read at least, let me see here. I think it's the last 7 or 8 slides of it. And if there are any recommendations that you want to make to the goals, the actions, if you do want to go through and read that within the CRP, the draft that you have, I believe it starts on page 32 and ends on 45. There's still opportunity for that. But yeah, so that's what we're looking at. Any lingering thoughts?
Any other thoughts?
I don't think so. If we do have any other questions or thoughts for you, we contact, who do
You
we,
could send them to me.
to Courtney?
Yeah, then I can look at them.
Okay.
Know what you're thinking, I don't know, helps me too. So then, and I communicate with Reva. We're in regular communication.
Fantastic. Well, just again, let Courtney know and she'll let me know. I will PDF this and send this over to you, Courtney, so it can be read through, and then hopefully that's a bit better of a mechanism than reading 10,000 words. And yeah, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reva.
Thank you, Reva.
See you later.
Sorry. No problem. Thank you for coming.
Yeah. thank you. Okay. Something for the rest of us. Downtown partnership activities, Casey?
Yeah.
Anything we got?
Downtown Tampa's Virtual Streaming Fest, led by Grove Financial, will be on March 16th from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. in Crescent Park. River will be kind of green, it's very friendly, it's not fish. It's going to be a great event. And this new iteration of it will correspond with the parade that's going to be happening downtown rather than as new businesses. But that's the big ticket item that we got going on this month. And I do.
And by the way, I really like the do tables and chairs.
In place, yeah, it's been great. It took a lot of paint swaps to figure out exactly the right color.
And then moving on to the next item on the agenda, the Tampa Friends of the Riverwalk activities. Mary Beth.
Anything, well, yes, so we have Riverfest coming up, which is our largest event, May 3rd and 4th, not too long after River Green. It's a 2-day food and music festival. We've got a taco fest, we've got Taste of the Riverwalk. I wanted to talk to you, Casey, because we're gonna try to build in the neighborhood branding for Taste of the Riverwalk on our signage. And so when we're seeking vendors for that, we're gonna try and pull restaurants around the Riverwalk in the different neighborhoods.
That's great.
So,
We'll talk more about that.
yeah. Wiener Dogs, Balloon Glow, Lantern Parade, lots going on for that event. Looking for sponsors if anybody's interested. Also, we always need volunteers to help us sell beer. If you're interested, let me know. And then Riverfest hasn't even started, but we're still pushing forward and starting to plan for 4th of July. I actually sent Rachel an email. What we try to do along the Riverwalk is coordinate not only, the events that we're hosting, but also with a partnership and Armature Works and Spark and Work, so that it's a true community event along the Riverwalk, and all of our events and activities are complementing one another. So we need to work really well as a community to try to do that and support one another. People who come out to the events have a nice experience no matter where they are along the Riverwalk. So that's what we have going on at STARS events.
Thank you very much. How long do you know is the Hendrick? How long is that? Yeah, how long is the scaffolding?
18 to 36 months.
Till it's probably done, probably some scaffolding, yeah.
Yeah, and we're actually very lucky that we have the scaffolding for 18 to 36 months, because they were talking about closing it. So, I mean, we really did have Abby and the city go to bat for us about, hey, then that cannot be closed. So we are very, very, very fortunate that that's open.
All right, anything else?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Moving on to new business. Budget review and planning. We have a budget.
Yeah.
And items that we got today.
Yeah, but and I just, I try to hide some columns so it's not so large. But you'll see what I'm gonna be working through is, we have the fiscal year 24 revised budget here, so you can look at the various line items of all the things that we have available for funding this fiscal year, which ends in September. And and then what's still left available. So some monies have been taken out of those line items, what's available currently in yellow. And then we are starting to forecast for fiscal year 25, which starts October 1st. So I went through this with my budget analyst today, and there really isn't a lot of room to play, to be honest. You'll see various line items as you go down. We have things that are already in agreement stages, like Tampa Theater, Strass Center, and Tampa Museum of Art now. So some of those things are just essentially, built into the budget. We can't do anything with those items that have funding agreements that, are commitments that we had made. So, and then I have to seek clarification on some things, whether they're actually going to come to fruition or not. You'll see, like we talked last time, Casey, the downtown, however it's listed in here, the mover thing.
Shuttle service, the on-demand shuttle service.
Yeah, and that does not need to be there.
Mhm.
So we need to move those funds and know that that line item really just needs to be removed from this budget. So there are some minor cleanups still that need to happen, but, in the grant programs, once we know what's actually established and approved by the CRA board, I would know what line items to put in here for those grants, and we would discuss how much to put in for each of those grants. But it's premature because they haven't approved them yet. I'm still waiting to find out after March 21st what it is that we are going to need to program out for those programs in fiscal year 25, or which programs. But everything is fairly established. Jackson Street, the remediation with the lot across from here, that is actually still ongoing, even though there's a hotel there. We were getting ready to close those POs out, and we were approached by the other city department and said, no, we're still paying invoices. So we still have that as needing to stay in the budget as is. I won't be adding money to it, but there is, there's still funding there that they're paying invoices against. Herman Massey Park, that's in there. That hasn't even gone out to bid yet. It will soon, but need to keep that in there. Neighborhood infrastructure, that's more of our flexible account, where if we need funding, then I can oftentimes pull from it because it has 1.5 million. So, if there are some needs, or the other one, there's a 6.4 million and then a 1.5 million budget availability.
So those aren't allocated to anything, it's kind of.
Yeah, so I mean, when there are some needs or things that come to us, then we could look at pulling, like for instance, that's, oh, sorry. Like for instance, in Ybor, it's called district improvement. And so that was always my district improvements was if something came through, it was, there was nothing necessarily established against it. I knew that was a large funding stream that I could take money from into a new recommendation. So neighborhood infrastructure is what used to be my district improvements in Ybor. So I can pull monies from there if we have interest that the CAC would like to fund, or if we have a really good strong proposal that comes to us, then that's where some funding availability is.
So we would reprogram some of that.
Yeah, so that would be a reprogram. It's sitting there in neighborhood infrastructure. And it's, divvied out by utilities, improvements, infrastructure. So it has gotten kind of broadened out to specific items, but really neighborhood infrastructure is not tied to anything specifically. So that is available for us to reallocate if needed. Kid Mason, that's a set project.
It's only 25 cents.
I was going through this with my budget analyst, but
I mean, if we can get rid of that 25 cents, we can be in the black.
I see what you can do. Yeah, I know, that's 4 cents down here. Yeah, I'm like, what is that? And then there's another one that was like $3 and something. So yeah, $3.34. So, yeah, those are little things that we're really tackling now. And- No, those are real. So we just need to fix them. We need to close them. I mean, we're government. We gotta do everything by bid. So I gotta figure out how to close out that 25 cents and that $3 line item. But, everything wayfinding, that's we've already actually allocated funding for the wayfinding installation. As you know, we just finished the study and now we're gonna be moving into fabrication installation. So that money's already been placed in the fiscal year 24 budget that's still sitting there waiting for us to do fabrication and installation. So everything pretty well is assigned, other than that neighborhood infrastructure I told you about. Cross Bay Ferry under transportation. This is the last year, fiscal year 25. As we go into fiscal year 25, that's the last year that there were commitments to fund the Cross Bay Ferry out of the downtown budget. They just declared bankruptcy. And they just declared bankruptcy.
You did.
But it's not supposed to affect their operations right now.
So as of now, our commitment is through fiscal year 25, so that would stay, if that would remain, we wouldn't see that in fiscal year 26. But fiscal year 25, we have that commitment there. So a lot of our budget are commitments. But I would need to start plugging in that pink column, those pink column numbers. With anything that is a definite commitment year over year. And then those grants, just guessing on what those grant amounts should be per program that's approved. Otherwise, we have, commitments.
Without getting too far into the weeds about the Jackson House renovations, that's like, it's $1 million that may or may not ever get used. I haven't heard any movement recently.
Yeah.
It's just gonna keep rolling over as a budget item if it doesn't get used.
Yeah, until we're told that it's no longer needed, it will just roll year to year. But that's the maximum commitment that I've been informed we're giving is the 1 million. So I'm not giving anything beyond the 1 million. But it's there as promised, and until told otherwise, it'll sit there and roll over.
And the community policing looks like it's grown significantly. We were setting aside 200,000. So is the money that we set aside, is that rolling?
Yeah, it's rolling, and I need to understand through Captain College, does he have a plan, or does he want to create a plan, or, my sister can tell me where that money was supposed to go.
Well, we were hiring additional units and also buying equipment. We bought bicycles and stuff for it. And then we were told, oh, we can't use CRA money for that. So then we stopped doing that.
Okay.
Just because there's a lot of visitors and people downtown, and the patrol allocations downtown haven't been changed in like 20 years. And if there's 100 times more people downtown now, so we were actually funding extra police patrols, extra equipment.
Okay, because I'll talk,
because
I work with Captain College and Igor, and we have a similar line item for that. So we had developed a plan and got buy-in from the community advisory committee that we would invest in security cameras, that TPD would purchase and monitor, even a variable message board sign that would relay messages like turn your volume down or tickets go up, things that would address the community's issues. So we worked, but we had, an approved plan of these are the types of items that the group, the CAC thought were good items for public safety. And so we worked with TPD closely on those funds and how they were spent. So I just need to approach college on what would you like to do? Do you have a plan you could think of for downtown, like Ybor? What could we do downtown? And here's your funding. We have an available funding stream that we could just utilize for those things.
So this is mostly just, the general idea is basically presence, police presence. I mean, but most of the issues we were having were street level things going on. It happens in a minute, and then, a minute later, it's over and no one's gone. And, if you call the police, nothing is going to come out of it. So, it's just having a presence downtown that we kind of, want to discourage some of the street level activities that are going on.
Yeah, I'll approach him about it, because we do have even a weekend, a special unit that we had paid for anymore for the weekends. And, things got a little hectic anymore. So there's, now that he's been here for several months, he was newer, now that he's been here for several months, maybe he's observed an approach to take in the area. And I can let him know, because he probably doesn't even know that this funding's there.
So Captain Brett Owen he was our liaison when we were utilizing that money, and then Alex took over, Alex Field, and I don't think that we were able to fund it at that point in time. But are we now permitted to use it? Because I thought until the new updated plan is in effect, we have to abide by the old CRP, and the old CRP does not allow us to use that.
There was
community
one of those
policing.
things by your predecessor. that I'm not quite sure we're all true.
Okay, I'll look into it, because community policing usually is in CR, in the CRPs, community policing is allowable, in underserved communities. So, let me just talk with, college and whoever else I need to speak with, but, we're still doing it in E4, and unless it explicitly states that we cannot use it toward community policing, but let me just.
Okay. He said it wasn't specifically said that it could do it
in the old plan.
but if you're saying that it doesn't necessarily have to specifically say that, as long as it doesn't say that you can't do it.
Yeah, well, and let me look, I do want to just double check, just what any language is in there. But, yeah, so because that was one of my questions when I was reviewing the budget today about community policing, because I know we do it in E4, but I just I wanted to understand more about that line item and expectations of it. Because it doesn't look like if everything's fine, we would not need to put any additional funding into that line item, for instance, because there's plenty there. Because I think we were around 200,000 to 400,000 more. So I don't think that would need to be increased or added to in fiscal year 25. So those are the things I'm looking at now, is I look at what we budgeted, what's available, determine what's rolling over to realize if I need to put any new money, or if what's available is likely to mostly roll over, and how much to add to that. So a lot of sorcery, right?
Okay.
Trying to establish what to present to the CRA board. And that usually goes around the June, July timeframe.
Okay.
So you'll see more of it, but as you can see, there's not a lot of wiggle room in our budget just because of funding commitments.
So can I, related to that, can I ask you a question? Last month, we had a presentation from the partnership about Franklin Street, and we had a vote, to recommend funding for that. Where does that say, based on what we're saying here, where is that?
It's my cash flow in the fiscal year 25 budget. So on my cash flow worksheet, I have Franklin, because that's my projections. Those are my projections. So Franklin Street, if approved, because it's just approved by this body, it needs to go to the CRA boards, which would be, we are planning May the 9th. So it has to go to the CRA board in order to live in the current budget. So I can't really make it live in my budget that's existing until they say I can put it in there. So it's over here in my cash flow budget. So it's on the radar. It just can't land on the actual budget until they give me.
I just want to make sure that fall out with. I'm very.
Yeah, now those like streetcar, Clinton made a $5 million streetcar motion. It's living in cash flow.
Just spend it.
For the expansion proposal. So I have my cash flow that's over here, so it keeps me, things don't fall off my radar. And I just have to wait till when I can merge them onto the actual budget.
So I made a presentation to the CRA board last month. And I was asked by one of the board members to let our committee know that when we're considering projects. I don't know exactly what this person was asking me to do, but he was asking us to not think extravagantly about projects when there are other neighborhoods of the city that have needs
Potholes.
and potholes and things like that they want to fix, and then we're spending a lot of money downtown. I don't know how we're supposed to reprogram money, but I was just asked to come back and let my committee know that a lot of other people in town are looking at us and saying, you know, how are they spending all these millions of dollars on all these extravagant projects and all the ones that are potholes, so.
It was a fair point, but also not within control.
Maybe it was what tax money.
Yeah. But this was a CRA board member, so I don't really exactly know what he was trying to tell me.
Who was that?
Carlson.
Carl's, I don't know if I was allowed to say.
I'll say it, because I was there, I witnessed the conversation, so I do remember it was
I think he
Carlson.
was really trying to tell you anything. He doesn't work. He could point to this situation.
Yeah.
Which is a fair. Nothing right.
Well, I said what I was supposed to
Same thing. So
say.
could you give him a second and say?
Be careful what your message back. Okay, any other budget questions?
No, I just, just know I'm keeping an eye on it and, not.
You're doing really an awesome job.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful that you're here and you do a good job of explaining and being transparent. So thank you.
Yeah.
Making the numbers work, actually work, add up.
Yeah, for some reason,
Balance.
I would never be.
But it's still
I
a
know,
hard
I
thing.
know. I'd never be an accountant, but sorry that you got into accountant.
If your whole life was budgets, that'd be not so much.
Yeah, true. I just love to play once in a while. I love keeping an eye on stuff, so, yeah, so I just, if there's ever anything that you want to be considered for the budget, let me know those things. But otherwise, I'm, gonna be moving Franklin study, the Franklin project in here once approved, and then any other items.
Well, the Cass Street underpass, is something that
Yeah.
Friends of Riverwalk has been advocating for. We actually had a conversation about it in here in the past. We invested in a feasibility study to determine whether it was feasible at this time, and indeed it is. And so Courtney and I were talking earlier about what is the next step in terms of how do we make that happen, because currently the CRA and the Channel Side CRA is putting aside $150,000 each for the beneficial bridge study. So I'm not sure why that one is moving forward and the Cass Street study isn't,
That's a good question. Yeah.
because, as an advocate for the Riverwalk, that crossing, the Riverwalk is part of the specialty cup district, which means people can drink alcohol, and we're allowing people to drink alcohol. I don't want them to take that away from us, but we're allowing people to cross that street with an alcoholic beverage and then to cross a street and a railroad track, which seems to be extremely unsafe to me. And the amount of traffic, I haven't done a study, and maybe you guys have, I would say there is far more foot traffic between that intersection versus the beneficial intersection. So I think that the Cass Street, and we've done the work, we've done the study, we've invested $22,000. So somebody from mobility, or I don't know who, could take a look at it. That would be fantastic.
Is there a way to do it? I know that they're thinking they'd have to go.
Yes, there is a way to do it. And we haven't, we had an estimate in July of 22, but nothing has happened since then. So it's probably a few million more at this point.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring it up to Cal Hardy, who I'm working with on the beneficial bridge study, because I don't know the historical information, why the beneficial bridge study happened on Cal Street, and so I don't
I
know.
wrote it to Jeff.
Okay.
Jeff was here.
So I'm just trying to figure out why one landed at the top, and, I don't know that information, but I'm happy to find out and then ask about some economies of scale with doing both.
Well, and if the west side over here is done, there's gonna be some, machines in the water there. While they're doing it, it would make sense to do the other side of the
Yeah, and I did bring it to someone's attention who left the city, Alex Henry. So now I just need to bring it back up, and I have a call with Cal Thursday morning, so I'll bring it up then again.
And from a Riverwalk closure point of view, you're gonna have the Museum of Art and Straz going under construction. It would sure make a lot of sense to do all of that at the same time, you know, if we're gonna be rerouting people.
Yeah, it could cause chaos, just make it, it's way chaos, you know?
That should
Yeah.
be in the conversation anyway, because when the art museum is done, aren't they gonna reroute the Riverwalk up past they're gonna reroute the Riverwalk, right?
If, yes, based
It's not
on,
gonna follow
based on the
path along
current,
the river. They're gonna kind of-
based on the current like crossing of the road, yes, it will cross the road again. And it's just that weird that go up the sidewalk and wonky.
What was the number you got for it?
Is it 13 million? It was like between 10 and 15 million. It depends on the
So that was in 22 that you had.
July of 22, Moffett Nickel did the study.
13, you said?
Well, I was just taking an average there, so between 10 and 15, probably. We actually did reach back out to Moffett Nickel, because of now I'm having more conversations with the CRA, about an updated cost estimate, on what that would look like. So I don't have that number yet.
Let's move on from budget here so we can close the meeting out. Going to unfinished business. Courtney, do you want to just run through these real quick?
Yeah, I just have brief notes to myself here. But so that site work is continuing, the revision permit was approved, so I guess I just submitted a roofing permits a couple times, but it was approved, so they're gonna start the roof installation.
Kid Mason?
Kid Mason. And then utility permit application was submitted for installation of a new water meter to accommodate capacity. So that's moving forward, that project, Beneficial Bridge, we just spoke about, so we're waiting on a scope of service from Element Engineering, who would be performing that study. Tampa Union Station, CRA board approved an additional an amendment to the current agreement of 2.5 million and amending it to add an additional 1.5 million. So that's what the CRA board motioned, and now we just need to move funds to accommodate that motion.
So what did we approve? We approved what, and then they approved, or?
This was a CRA board initiated motion.
Okay.
Because we approved 2 different 1 million.
Yes, so
I think
it's
it's
in
2 million
addition to
total.
that.
There was a budget of 2.5 million. I'd say 2.5, yeah, something
We
around,
did 2 different 1 millions.
Right.
Or give or take.
yeah, so in total, 2.5 were the monies in the budget.
And then they
Added
added
an
another
additional
1.5.
1.5 million, which was a motion by the CRA board. So we've had,
I was just over there this week though, that building's a bad shape.
yeah.
Termite wings falling from the ceiling.
So anyway, I had to prepare a funding reallocation to request that, this is how it's gonna happen. The CRA board's motion to make sure we can move funding to accommodate that. So that should be approved in April. And then Herman Massey Park, we are trying to put additional funding into that because it is a 2022 estimate of what the construction would cost for Herman Massey. So we're trying to lift the funding into current market, a current market amount of roughly 2 million. And we're gonna put the bid out on the street for a $2 million construction bid. So we're asking March 21 to move funding to help bring the existing funding up to $2 million to then release the bid. And then I have no further information on 103 East Laurel Street other than the presentation I provided to you all last month that the planning department presented to the CRA board. That's all I still have of that project. I don't have any new information since last month.
Let's say last month, so sorry to miss that meeting. Is that presentation?
I can
somewhere?
try to find it and send it or copy it if I don't have a paper copy, but I'll write myself a note.
And then, I also noticed one of our recommendations was denied by the board, right? Or one of our affordable housing recommendations.
Oh, the Encore?
Yeah, right, is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah, so both were, there was a lot 10 and a lot 12. Now, I've already forgotten my numbers. Lot was, what was lot 10? 10. Lot 10 was the downtown side. With the affordable housing component, yes, they denied it, both of them, because they want to do more of a, like an RFP process or something that whereby developers respond to something that is not reactive on our part. So we were more, I think, reactive to lot 10 and lot 12's proposals. They came to us, where now they want to be out in front and say, let's put out an RFP that developers respond to our
So
wants.
we have this much money available.
Or we have this land, or we have this, we have this want, give us your, request or your responses, what you think you could do with this property, or if we have this funding, how could you utilize this for affordable housing? So that discussion is going to happen March 21st also.
Okay.
So they wanted to put sort of a moratorium on those requests coming to them and
So that
deny
money
them.
that we were supposed to allocate to that, that's just rolling over.
Well, it was never approved.
Oh.
Yeah, so we had no
So it's just
money.
sitting in the.
Yeah, and they were reimbursements, so not until the developments happened would they actually produce the money to reimburse to them. So we wouldn't have put money on the budget until they generated.
So it wasn't necessarily the project that had an issue with, it was just the process they wanted.
Yeah, but it also was, I know,
More units.
they wanted more units and we're about 80% AMI and below, actually.
So that one didn't pass, but the
Gasworks did.
Gas source will get into.
Gasworks did, the Encore proposals did not. Because, Gasworks is infrastructure,
Mhm.
things that the city
Yeah.
may in time had to have done. But it's public realm infrastructure, so they felt comfortable approving the Gasworks development. The other two, they weren't quite as comfortable.
Okay, sorry to jump back to the budget, but is there an item for affordable housing like that?
Oh, yeah, we get 30% of our budget every year for
Yeah.
affordable
What
housing.
is that in here?
Mhm.
Or how they mentioned, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And that'll go on until we're told we don't have to do it, but
Yeah.
30% of the total TIF revenue of that fiscal year is 30% is to be set aside for affordable housing.
SPP is in here.
And since that didn't get approved, we still have that money. Just waiting
Correct,
for-
it's any of the affordable housing, it's rolls over.
Yep.
Rolls over. But yes,
When's SPP money in?
where is that? Bottom one, our debt
There's a
service is for
Franklin
the
Street
convention
Utilities
center.
at River Street.
No,
That's over there by the Grandpa Plaza. That's
the debt service there at the bottom are the new convention center.
that's-
This is. I know it's here, I just talked about it today with Susan. So transfer to master infrastructure, that's it. On the second page backside, transfer to master infrastructure fund.
That's SPP.
Yeah.
And that's 20% of our budget.
Around, the $5.5 million, not to exceed 20% every year.
And we don't, do you have any on that ends or you just don't know that other head?
It was 50 million.
Wow.
So I don't know, I don't know the year. But the county also contributes to it.
Any other business? Okay. Announcements, we talked a little bit earlier about the CAC member orientation, and there's information on the back of your agenda. March 25th or April 1st. If you haven't attended one of these, as a CAC member, you really should, so that you can know more about what we're doing here. The next item on there is the next CAC meeting. Our meeting would be April 2nd at 5:30 PM right here. I have a comment about that. I will not be here. I've discussed this with Courtney already. And I also wanted to make sure that you all know that I am not the chair. I'm the vice chair. We don't have a chair. So if I'm not here next meeting, there isn't anyone really designated to lead the meeting. I don't know if you want to deal with that at the beginning of next meeting or discuss it now. Or how do you want to do it?
Peer pressure. Jim
Can we,
wants to-
can we promote you to the chair?
He wants to be chair.
I
You
wouldn't
do a fine job.
mind doing that. I think there are other people that are also very capable and have probably better organizational experience than I do. But we can leave that if you guys want to think about it a little bit, but I won't be here next month.
So we'll just phone you in.
Yeah.
So we need to obviously find a chair and possibly promote Dan and then find a vice chair or find a chair and keep Dan.
I would also be fine if you just leave me as vice chair and just appoint a chair. I would be fine with that as well. In fact, I actually prefer that.
Do we have anybody that, I'm not raising my hand, does any, I
Yeah,
have
I
a
don't-
name saying
there
that
is
to begin with.
Someone that could be interested.
Okay.
So we can bring that up if any, well, actually, I would approach that individual to consider chairing in Dan's absence the next meeting.
Yeah, they do well, and we'll.
It'll be a test.
That's why I was like, it's like, it'll be a trial run, and they may not like it, so no. But,
Well, now I have to come to the meeting and see what it's gonna be.
but Dan, no, you've done a wonderful job. Thank you for stepping in and did a great job at the CRA board update. So
Sure.
very much appreciated. So you do what you want to do.
Okay.
Just let me know.
And then the next CRA board meeting is March 21st, and we have a few items, right, that will be from us going there on March 21st.
Yeah, like Herman Massey, reallocation, yeah.
CRP.
The CRP, yes, that's the big one. Yeah, the CRP update. Reva, it will be the presenter of that. And that will be the first time they're being introduced to this matrix. So we're kind of excited to see what they think about that. I think they'll like it.
Good. I think that's great. I mean, it's always been very fuzzy about like what's, what should we even think about? So I think it's very good.
Many organizations use rubrics and it helps the person, whether they're writing a grant or filling out an application, to know what the expectation is. And then it's much more black and white than just.
Exactly.
I do hope that there will be, I mean, we have had just small groups that, they wanted to have an event in the park and have come to us for, funding for like $1,000 or something like that. I do hope there will be a pathway for people like that.
I think that's through the partnership.
For that partnership.
They have a new grant program.
I'm blanking on the name, but it's much larger than a small activation grant. It's
Neighborhood activation.
Yes, neighborhood activation
We
grant.
just read like 20 of them.
Very, very bad.
You're that. Yeah, I would have a different view than that. Yeah, there's a lot of grants for that one.
I'm finding out she's a good reader.
I do my homework. Given an assignment.
Is that presentation that Reba presented today, can that be shared with us?
And yeah, I plan to, because, any feedback would be great. She's gonna send a PDF to me to send out to you.
Please do something, because that can be. most of what was up there.
Yeah, no, I will, she probably already sent it to me.
I was following along with the one they sent, but it does look, it's much easier to read for those graphics.
Yeah, and that was the intent, was to us do the Word document review, but we couldn't get the presentation done like that fast enough. So I'm like, I need to get them the Word document. So that's why I went and said the Word, but we wanted to give you that version, but it's done now, so I'll give it to you.
All right. And then, like I said, this is the end of the meeting, so we will adjourn the meeting at 7:16, 7:17 PM.
Good job.
Thank you. We'll see you all. Well, you will see all each other next month.
That's fingers crossed on that. I was a little disappointed. Walking there, it was sunny all day and then right at 5:30.
I saw the radar, like, more than that, some oil regarding what, like, we.
I looked at my nose and walked around, I was like, "No, not raining, no chance of rain, open the door. I gotta
That's the,
Well, it won't take me, it won't change. Right. It'll be good for you.
You guys have a good one. God bless everybody.
thank you. Thank you for that.
It's not,
I looked at it.
it's rough, it's, it was like after working hours, so this is
Well,
all.
It's
We'll
way,
sit down and like hammer out what you want.
it's way better than what I got from